Why would anyone dig through trash for a handful of cents? The question hung in the air like a taunt as Karen stood at the edge of the recycling center, her arms crossed, her lips curled into a sneer. The sun beat down on the cracked asphalt, glinting off the aluminum cans scattered at her feet. She wore a garish floral blouse, her oversized sunglasses perched on her nose like a crown, and her voice carried the kind of self-assured venom that silenced everyone nearby. "You're pathetic," she spat, her words slicing through the humid air. "What kind of loser spends their day collecting garbage? Get a real job." The man she targeted stood quietly, his shoulders hunched, a worn canvas bag slung over his arm. His name was David, though Karen didn't know it, nor did she care to. His clothes were faded, his hands calloused, and his face etched with lines that spoke of a life harder than most. He didn't respond, just kept sorting his cans, his movements slow but deliberate. The clink of metal against metal was the only sound for a moment, drowned out by Karen's sharp laugh. "Seriously, you're embarrassing yourself?" she continued, stepping closer, her shadow falling over him. "People like you are why this place looks like a dump." The teenage worker at the recycling counter, a lanky kid named Miguel, froze, his hands hovering over the scale. He glanced at the elderly woman beside him, Miss Clara, who often brought her bottles to chat with the staff. Both looked uneasy, caught in the crossfire of Karen's tirade. David's silence only seemed to fuel her. "What, you mute or just stupid?" she pressed, her voice rising. "You think you're saving the planet or something? This is pathetic." She gestured at the cans, kicking one for emphasis. It skittered across the pavement, drawing a flinch from Miguel. David finally looked up, his eyes tired but steady. "I'm just doing what I need to," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the hum of traffic nearby. Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please, spare me the sob story." She turned to Miguel and Miss Clara, as if expecting applause. "Can you believe this guy? Wasting everyone's time." Miguel shifted uncomfortably, muttering something about processing the cans, while Miss Clara clutched her purse, her lips pressed into a thin line. The air crackled with tension, the kind that made bystanders hold their breath, waiting for the next move. But David didn't bite. He knelt to pick up the can Karen had kicked, placing it carefully back in his bag. His restraint was infuriating to her, like a mirror reflecting her own cruelty. "You're not even worth my time," she snapped, turning on her heel, her sandals slapping the pavement as she stormed toward her car. The onlookers exhaled, but the weight of her words lingered, heavy and sour. David resumed his work, his face unreadable, but there was a quiet dignity in his movements that Karen couldn't touch. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that David wasn't collecting cans for himself. Every cent from those cans went to a fundraiser for kids with cancer, a cause he'd poured his heart into since losing his daughter, Ellie, 2 years ago. She'd been 7, her smile brighter than the sun overhead, until leukemia stole it away. David had made a promise at her bedside. He'd keep fighting for kids like her, no matter how small the effort seemed. The cans were his way of keeping that promise, one clinking handful at a time. Karen's mockery hadn't just insulted him. It had spat on Ellie's memory. As Karen drove off, her air-conditioned SUV blasting pop music, David's story began to spread. Miguel, still shaken, posted about the encounter on a local community forum, his fingers trembling as he typed. "This lady just ripped into a guy at the recycling center for no reason," he wrote. "He was collecting cans for charity, and she called him a loser. People need to know." The post gained traction, shared by locals who recognized David's quiet presence around town. Comments poured in, some angry, some heartbroken. One user, a nurse named Sarah, added a detail that hit like a gut punch. "That's David. He's been fundraising for pediatric cancer for years. Lost his kid to it. He's a hero." The internet did what it does best. It amplified. Within hours, the story reached thousands, including a local reporter, Jenna, who saw David's face in the pixelated photo Miguel had snapped. She knew him from a story she'd written last year about his fundraiser, a small event that raised enough for a few hospital visits for kids in treatment. Jenna's heart sank as she read the post. She messaged Miguel, asking for details, and by evening, she was at the recycling center, interviewing Miss Clara, who recounted Karen's outburst with quiet outrage. "That woman didn't even give him a chance to explain," Miss Clara said, her voice trembling. "She just wanted to hurt him." Jenna's article went live the next morning, titled "Local Hero Mocked for Charity Work at Recycling Center." It included David's story, his loss, his promise, his tireless work. The community erupted. People shared memories of seeing David around town, always with his bag, always with a kind word. A GoFundMe page linked to his fundraiser surged with donations, climbing past its modest goal. But the story also named Karen, whose face was clear in Miguel's photo. Her floral blouse and oversized sunglasses were unmistakable, and someone recognized her as the manager of a nearby boutique. The internet sleuths took it from there. Karen woke to a flood of notifications. Her store's Yelp page was tanking, one-star reviews piling up with comments like, "disgusting behavior," and "how dare you mock a man like David?" Her phone buzzed with angry messages, some from strangers, some from neighbors. She tried to dismiss it, calling it a misunderstanding. But the evidence was damning. Miguel's photo, Jenna's article, and the community's outrage painted a clear picture. Karen's smugness began to crack, replaced by a gnawing dread. She hadn't known about David's cause, but did that matter? She'd chosen cruelty over curiosity, and now the world knew it. By noon, Karen's boutique was quieter than usual, the usual hum of customers replaced by an eerie stillness. She stood behind the counter, scrolling through the comments on her store's social media, her fingers trembling. "Bully. Heartless. Shame on you." Each word stung, but she couldn't look away. She told herself she'd been justified. David looked like a vagrant, and who wouldn't call that out? But the truth was sinking in. She'd misjudged him, and the consequences were closing in. She tried to post a defense on her store's page, a half-hearted apology that blamed stress and miscommunication. It backfired. "You didn't communicate at all," one commenter shot back. "You just attacked him." Across town, David was unaware of the storm. He was at the hospital, delivering a check from his fundraiser to the pediatric oncology ward. The nurses greeted him warmly, used to his quiet visits. He handed out small toys to the kids, his smile soft but strained. The memory of Karen's words lingered, not because they hurt him to hurt worse, but because they reminded him how easily people judged what they didn't understand. He thought of Ellie, how she'd giggle when he'd bring her a stuffed bear from the gift shop. The thought kept him going even now. Then came the twist no one saw coming. Jenna, digging deeper for a follow-up story, discovered Karen wasn't just a random bully. She'd been a volunteer at the same hospital years ago, during Ellie's treatment. A nurse remembered her. Karen had been kind then, bringing cupcakes for the kids, even chatting with David once or twice. The revelation hit Jenna like a bolt. Karen hadn't known David was the same man from those days, but the irony was brutal. She'd mocked someone she'd once helped, someone whose grief she'd witnessed. Jenna hesitated, then included it in her next article, framing it as a question. How does someone go from kindness to cruelty? The article exploded, shared across platforms, sparking debates about redemption, hypocrisy, and second chances. Some defended Karen, arguing she'd made a mistake, that people change under pressure. Others saw it as proof of her true character, a mask slipping to reveal the ugliness beneath. David read the article at Miguel's urging, his heart heavy. He remembered Karen vaguely, her cupcakes a bright spot in those dark days. He didn't hate her, but he couldn't forgive her either, not yet. "People lash out when they're scared," he told Miguel. "Doesn't make it right." Karen, meanwhile, was unraveling. Her boss called, warning that her behavior was tanking the store's reputation. Customers had stopped coming, and a local news channel was planning a segment on the story. Desperate, she reached out to Jenna, begging for a chance to tell her side. Jenna agreed, meeting her at a coffee shop. Karen's bravado was gone, her face puffy from crying. "I didn't know," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought he was just lazy. I was having a bad day. Okay? I didn't mean it." Jenna listened, her pen still, but her eyes were skeptical. "You didn't ask," she said simply. "You assumed." The confrontation was set. Jenna arranged a public meeting at the community center, moderated by a local pastor, where Karen could face David and the community. The room was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Karen walked in, her head low, her floral blouse replaced by a plain sweater. David sat near the front, his hands folded, his face calm but guarded. The pastor opened with a call for understanding, but the crowd was restless, their murmurs sharp. Karen took the mic, her voice shaky. "I'm sorry," she began. "I didn't know who he was or why he was there. I was wrong." The words sounded hollow to some, sincere to others. David listened, his expression unreadable. Then it was his turn. He stood, his voice steady but soft. "I don't do this for recognition," he said, gesturing to the bag of cans beside him. "I do it for my daughter, Ellie. She was 7 when she died. Every can is for kids like her so they can have a chance." The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over everyone. "You didn't know," he said to Karen, meeting her eyes. "But you didn't care to know. That's what hurt." Karen's face crumpled, tears spilling. The crowd was divided. Some clapped for David. Others whispered about Karen's sincerity. The meeting didn't resolve everything. Karen's apology was a start, but it couldn't erase the damage. Her store continued to struggle, and she stepped down as manager, citing personal reasons. But the community rallied around David. His fundraiser tripled its goal, and volunteers joined him at the recycling center, turning his solitary work into a movement. Local businesses donated, and kids from the hospital sent him drawings. One with a stick figure David holding a can, captioned, "Our Hero." Karen's world continued to crumble in the weeks that followed. The boutique's owner, under pressure from the community, let her go entirely. She found herself avoiding public places, the weight of judgmental stares too much to bear. She spent hours replaying the moment at the recycling center, wishing she'd walked away instead of speaking. The twist about her past volunteering haunted her most. Been proud of that time, proud of helping kids like Ellie. How had she become the person who mocked their champion? She started therapy, grappling with the question, but answers were slow to come. David, meanwhile, kept moving forward. The influx of donations meant more hospital visits for kids, more toys, more moments of joy in sterile rooms. But he didn't bask in the attention. He was still the quiet man with the canvas bag, collecting cans at dawn, his promise to Ellie unbroken. The community's support was a comfort, but it didn't erase the ache of loss. He visited her grave often, telling her about the kids he was helping, imagining her smile. "We're doing good, kiddo," he'd whisper, his voice catching. The legal repercussions for Karen came quietly but firmly. The recycling center's owner filed a complaint for harassment, citing her disruptive behavior and the scattered cans as property damage. It was a minor charge, but the court mandated community service, ironically, at a local charity. Karen spent her first day sorting donations, her hands shaking as she worked under the watchful eyes of volunteers who knew her story. It was humbling in a way she hadn't expected. She saw David once, from a distance, dropping off a check at the charity's office. He didn't see her, but the sight of him made her chest tighten. She wanted to speak, to apologize again, but the words wouldn't come. The community's response evolved. Some forgave Karen, moved by her efforts to make amends. Others held firm, arguing that actions have consequences. A local artist painted a mural near the recycling center, depicting a child holding a can, with the words "For Ellie" in soft colors. It became a gathering spot, a reminder of David's work and the power of small acts. School groups visited, learning about recycling and fundraising, and David spoke to them, his voice gentle but firm. "It's not about the money," he'd say. "It's about showing up, every day, for someone who needs you." Karen's journey was less triumphant but no less human. During her community service, she met a mother whose son was in treatment, a boy who loved the toys David's fundraiser provided. The mother's gratitude, her quiet strength, broke something open in Karen. She started volunteering beyond her mandated hours, not for redemption but because it felt right. She never spoke to David directly, he wasn't ready, and she respected that, but she began collecting cans herself, dropping them off anonymously at the center. It was a small act, unnoticed by most, but it was hers. Years later, the story of David and Karen became a local legend, a cautionary tale about judgment and a testament to resilience. David's fundraiser grew into a foundation, named Ellie's Light, with chapters in neighboring towns. He stepped back from the spotlight, letting younger volunteers take the lead, but he never stopped collecting cans. Karen rebuilt her life quietly, working at a nonprofit, her old bravado replaced by a cautious humility. She carried the weight of her mistake but also the hope of her change. The recycling center, once a place of confrontation, became a symbol of second chances. People left notes on the mural, thanking David, encouraging Karen, sharing their own stories of loss and redemption. The cans kept coming, clinking into bags, each one a promise kept, a life touched. And somewhere, in the quiet moments of dawn, David would look at the sky and feel Ellie's presence, knowing he'd made her proud. The world could be cruel, but it could also heal one choice, one heart at a time.